What is going on, family? Welcome back to DXB Crypto with another banger. I'm going to ask you to like the video, share the video, and if you're here for the first time, welcome to our community where we look at crypto from multiple different angles. So welcome back and let's go. Today I've got an important one for you. If anything, it's very educational and it does have crypto and Bitcoin angle to it. We are a crypto channel, you'd expect that, but let's go. So fractions are starting to appear between the relationship of Donald J. Trump and Jerome Powell. All right. So I predicted this. Everybody predicted this. You know, this was going to happen eventually. They did clash in Trump's first presidency, and it's happening again. Now, you've got to take this with a massive macroeconomic views. What's wrong with the global economy right now? What's wrong with the tariffs? All of these things have a degree of historical connotation. So you need to put that into perspective. Now, one of the first things I look at is the evolution of American manufacturing. Who's responsible for America's decline from producing, steam engines, jet engines, agricultural might? If you are a student of history, you would know that the, First and Second World War, really the industrial manufacturing might of America was a key factor in those conflicts. So America has always been a mighty manufacturing nation. However, you are delusional if you think you can actually, through tariffs or whatever, if you could just switch on this American might, okay? Let's go through this. Now, let's look at a brief history of American manufacturing. So if you look at this, these are the timelines. Beginning of modern bulk material handling. This was in the, 16th century there. And of course, you go through the Industrial Revolution in the 1820s, American steam locomotives. And this continues, first car manufactured in the United States, the Model T. Of course, that sounds familiar. That would set you back $850 back then. Okay. And then they start to go into what's called lean manufacturing, and Toyota begins developing JIT. And then in 1942, jet engines were developed in the United States, of course, largely because of the demands for the Second World Wars. And then, of course, first CAD drawing software was created in the United States in 1953, okay? First commercial silicon transistor. You continue this, and you can see the industrial might of America, go back to IBM in 1981. First PC introduced, of course, and that was the IBM PC compatible hardware platform with a model number 550. Okay, so the reason I'm showing you this is you are looking at a nation that had a tradition for being a manufacturing beast. Now, the question I throw back to you is, can that be gained back in the space of 4 years? Let's face it, Trump is in office for 4 years. So what else is wrong? If obviously, in democracies, powers shift and change. And in the short term, I do believe this is going to be very positive for the markets. However, we need to understand something. Distribution of labor force by sector from 1840 to 2010. This is not an American problem. This is a Western industrialized nation's problems. Across the developing world, i.e. when China was developing, when, for those of you who remember, made in Taiwan, all electronics made in Taiwan, all right, made in Singapore, all right. A lot of stuff will move in the next century to made in Africa because that's where raw materials are. So as Africa industrializes and builds factories first, that is a natural flow of human development. Now, if you look at the American service sector or the European or the British or whatever Western nation or developed nation you're at, people tend to enjoy services, right? These are the biggest sectors. Now, are they as large as manufacturing? I would say yes, they are bigger. So you can clearly see in this graph, services industry makes up well over just under 80% of the distribution of labor force. Okay, so not just the US, but I think aging developed populations, even in the case of Japan, the Japanese don't produce what they used to produce because the populations is aging. You need labor force, you need migrant workers. So you have to understand economies shift. And the priority is those nations that had a head start in industrializing eventually find themselves as service-driven economies. And we can actually see here, manufacturing share of US unemployment from you can see here from 1947. Look at that decline, man. That looks like the chart of mantra. OM. You can't just turn this around. This stuff is not just doable like that. So what else is there happening? So what I've done is I try to rationalize and I try to come up with a presentation, Trump versus Powell. So hear me out on this one. Now, they are knocking heads again, like I said at the beginning of the show, and the plan is simple, all right? This is something that we spoke about a year ago, but the plan was very simple. Slap tariffs, crash the stock market, money bleeds into bonds, rates stay low, but guess what? That did not happen, okay? That did not happen at all, and of course, rates kept on creeping up. So now the Fed is under way more pressure to the point where the Fed chair is really cracking, and this is exactly not what we wanted, but the system is breaking right in front of our eyes, okay? So let me give you the bigger picture here. This is the third great financial crisis, ladies and gents. So not stocks this time, not mortgages like last time, but this time it is the US Treasuries. Now, they are the backbone of the global financial order with the US dollar, okay? So you have to understand, we are in a situation where things have to go our way or things would go absolutely, it will be more difficult. But I do believe with what's happening now, coming out of the Fed, everyone's under pressure and things may continue to go south for a little bit. But I ultimately believe what's being engineered here is the great wealth transfer, okay? So let's go back to 1929. Stock markets crashed, but what really broke the system is the question. And then it was banks, all right? So the banks were responsible for lending, and of course, companies went under, and that's all she wrote. Now, in 2008, we saw the big short, what we call the big short. Mortgages got wrecked through the system. So treasuries, mortgages, corporate bonds, all leveraged to the moon. And we saw the largest housing crash in human history, okay? People are standing on a house of cards made of debt, and there was no way out. And that didn't matter who, you remember those early Obama days, Lehman Brothers. There was just a cascade of shit, Royal Bank of Scotland and other things falling apart, okay? So this is why I believe there are no blue chip factories, no manufacturing, because the bankers bought the economy. So you'd rather speculate on the economy, through the markets than you would having infrastructure and literally making stuff. All right. Now, let's go with the facts here. The Fed is printing more money, so you buy everything. That's the concept of what I call the American or even the Western dream, right? Money will be printed, and of course, Wall Street will just pump things full of cash. And yeah, where's the investment in real, I would say, Europe, or where is the investment in infrastructure, in manufacturing, in production in Europe? Now, you have to caveat this with what I've said before. Nations become industrialized, and then they become service economies. So I don't buy the idea, the fact that, you can just wake up one night and say, I'm going to produce everything that I need. Don't forget, some of these nations have the highest obesity rate globally. I'm not saying fat people can't go to the factories, but I'm definitely saying as nations become consumers, Starbucks is what is exported out, and what is consumed internally is McDonald's. But where is the wrappers coming from? Packaging, right? Go ask yourself, man, this stuff is not, this is a part of history that I love. I'm a student of international relations. I love looking back in history. And this just tells me right now, this period we're in, we're going to go back to historical levels of printing. All right? So no infrastructure, no modern factories. China makes everything. And yet, the stock market in the US is 10 times bigger than their stock market. Okay? So this is what you expect. Foxconn is there producing laptops, microchips, iPhones, right? The US debt is heading towards 100 trillion, right? And in addition to that, there is an interest rate to pay, So ultimately, this is going to solve itself. Either we have a monumental crash, or we get back to a situation where the usual happens for Bitcoin and for risky assets. And I do believe, just like you remember the Lehman Brothers, just like you remember, the big failures, Royal Bank of Scotland, and all these, housing crashes and everything. In the US Treasury market, you can pick up the phone and that's it. Get it done. We're not in the stock market crash. We are in a sovereign debt confidence collapse. And this is only just beginning. Okay? That's why it's going to be very important to make sure, if we do get a relief rally or some kind of a bull run this year towards the end, because it'll either come towards the end of this year or early next year, you sell everything. All right? Macro finance and debt crisis. Look, we don't want to be dragging. Whether we go into a longer, right, translated cycle, and this is the end of kind of this squabbling, and Trump gets a period where this is not topical. There are midterms coming. Position yourself for greatness. Understand the risks. But next time the bull market is running, do not be greedy. Because Bitcoin benefited, if you remember, back in 2024, when we had the spate of bank collapses, Bitcoin just went absolutely wonders. We are in a new asset class that is literally changing the way the financial system. We talked about RWAs. We talked about a lot of these things, guys. But this is time to look after the family. All right? If this is going to be the third wave or the biggest crash of this century, which is, this is going to be something that we need to consider as taking maximum advantage. Now, in summary, do I think we will get a pump and Bitcoin goes to all-time high? Yes, I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But do I think it's more important to start to create income revenues, income streams, try to be independent, try to have your own business as much as you can, try to learn crypto, because this is the only way, guys, to stay outside of the sharks. Anyway, I hope you find this video very useful. Like I said, it has taken me time to put everything together. I'd appreciate if you like it, and I'll definitely catch you on the next one, guys. And before I go, up to the Arsenal. Take care, guys.